Well, I think that's one thing we've discovered in our journey as Resilient Jefferson County and all of the work that was done prior to that is there's a lot of resources out there that not everybody knows about. School counselors, K-12 in our district, we're all talking about it, we're all working on it. They are a tremendous resource. So pediatricians, your doctor, they understand the health outcomes. We have 2 mental health agencies, we have private therapists, yoga, massage, music, lots of resources that we have in our community. It's just a matter of getting the word out. So everyone from your doctor, to your school, to your family unit, to folks down at the clearinghouse that help with all those specific programmings. It's just a matter of getting the information and the resources out there to people who need it. I must say, however, that we don't have enough resources. We don't have enough therapists in our community that are readily accessible to our community members to help them if they need therapy. And I think we're looking to grow all of the supportive services so that it kind of makes sense as to why we're doing it.
There's a positive impact, and you see the positive impact in the form of the success stories, the ones that are retained, the one that get their degree, and they're the first in they're the first generation in their family to get that degree in higher education. That's one thing. The other thing that I would bring up on that is that so many of these students, the ones that that need to be reached the most, are coming from families that don't know any different. So that circumstance or that environment of adverse childhood experience is one that they grew up in, and probably their parents did as well. So they not only do they not know how to break the cycle, they don't know what anything outside the cycle looks like. So when they do interact with others, faculty, staff, and other students at the school, I think it becomes a positive influence. And we know that we reach students. We know that we have those success stories. We try to have them talk to others. We've got billboards in this community with former substance abusers that are now part of our actual. They're part of, have formed their own charities, helping others, and sometimes are even adjunct faculty for our organization. I've seen that with the employers, and also as for where I've had an opportunity to participate with Resilient Jefferson County is some of those persons that had some of the worst experiences are the ones that are the most dedicated to helping others. And I think that's true whether you're talking about like the narrow scope of just Ivy Tech employers or otherwise. I think what we see, you could relate to Ivy Tech, is we see the ones that are the most dedicated to come to us, not interested in the careers that have the highest financial remuneration, but those that are maybe the calling where they're helping others, are often those that did not have that good experience, but either they recovered, somehow found their way to a better circumstance, and now want to help others that were in that circumstance. That's clear. We see that, and it's one of those things you can say, okay, there's a clear case of making a difference. The times have changed, and especially in a community like Madison, where the demographic, most in the demographic don't have children in school, but there's a fair number that do. It's not the same environment for those kids today. It's I think, a more difficult environment, and those kids those offspring are diamonds in the rough. And diamonds in the rough are still diamonds, and we have to make an investment in them in order to make sure that it becomes better for a future generation. And there's a real genuine lack of hope in the minds of many of these kids. I just came today from the high school. I've been talking all day with high school kids in the 9th and 10th grade. I asked 375 students in groups of 75 each, how many of them were interested in staying in this community. I didn't see any hands. I'm not exaggerating. Now, they're 9th and 10th graders. That's probably not a question they have on their mind. But the resolute few that would go out on a limb and say they want to stay in this community, none. And if you're an employer that's looking at long-term sustainability, and I come from the Honda Group world where sustainability is 70 to 100 years from now. It's after I'm gone and then some. is the company going to survive? And that's the best definition of sustainability I've ever heard, is that long-term of thinking. And when you look at it that way, if you're looking at the success of this community, you need to be thinking about that human asset in our young people and how we turn that around. Otherwise, I don't know how we're going to be able to sustain our community. We're not the only community with this challenge. There's many, many others in similar circumstance. But if we can be the ones that wake up, we can be the community that wakes up first and applies resources to fix it, we will be that much better off.
I think that we could go a little bit further when it comes to mental health, though. There are definitely things that we need in the way of providing things on the weekends or in the evenings that are local, that don't require families to have to go out of town, that would allow parents who need to work and can't afford to miss those days to be able to provide things for their children and themselves, and to be able to get the mental health help that they need. We could also use more parenting classes or parenting educational support, because in order for parents to be able to help their children cope with their own emotional dysregulation, they have to themselves have those same skills and those executive functioning skills to allow them to be able to plan and deal with everything that is coming their way. When we talk about other options and other things that might be helpful, summer programming, so that children can continue to be engaged even when they're outside of the school hours and outside of the school building, because we know that just having that one caring individual, that one caring adult figure, can mean all the difference and provide a buffer to all of this toxic stress that we talk about when we talk about adverse childhood experiences. I think being open to sit down and have a conversation, being open to express your own concerns or your own vulnerabilities as a parent or a caregiver, and offering suggestions, but knowing that that's really not the end of it, because we can always suggest things. We can always say, well, if I were doing it, this is how it might work out, and this would be ideal for me. But knowing how that might work in their circumstances and in their lives really makes a big difference. Sometimes we do our best to offer all of these suggestions and say, well, all you have to do is this. It's just as simple as this. And sometimes the simple things aren't so simple. When you're stressed and you don't know what else to do, when you're dealing with your own mental health and you are the only provider for a child, or when you've recently lost a loved one, or when your child seemingly has trouble regulating themselves and you don't have the tools to regulate your own emotions, simple things are no longer simple. So just being willing to have the conversation and ask instead of assuming why people do the things they do, why people parent the way that they parent. Those are all important. I can't help but believe that once every person in our community understands what adverse childhood experiences can do to an individual and how improvement in those specific aspects of someone's life can really lead to full-on community betterment, I can't help but believe that we are going to change the way that we see each other. The way that we place blame for things and we point out individual flaws in a person, and the way that we assume the worst will change. We will stop pointing fingers. We will start looking at why this is the case and what happened to that individual in our community, as opposed to what's wrong with them. We talk about that all the time, right? And how we change that question. Because what happened might be a specific occurrence. It may be a list of traumas. It may be a flaw in our system. But we'll start pointing at those flaws in our system as opposed to the individuals. And we'll work towards policies that make that better. We'll start looking at families as units that need help in every aspect, whether it's in the parenting aspect or the child's ability to regulate themselves, or the caregiver's ability to understand their child needs additional help. But again, we'll stop making that assumption that our parents and our community don't want to help, that they don't want to care for their children in the way that we seem to think is so easy, or that the child who's having difficulties in school doesn't want to be distracting, doesn't want to have trouble, doesn't want to be in detention on a regular basis, but that they just need help to do the things that they really, truly want. And if we talk about it from that aspect, it's important for our entire community because that helps us all thrive. That's all we want, is a thriving community. So it starts with the children, but it also involves some of the adults who are struggling, and many of us are, in different aspects of our lives. I think that there are so many ways that we could work more closely together so that we're no longer siloing the child's interactions with each of these entities, but I think we're on the right path. We talk about this Handle with Care, right? And that program would be vital to making these connections. If we talk about handling with care with a child who's at a specific location where police officers are called out, then they're called out to this location, now there's children involved, and those children's schools are also informed. So that tomorrow when Jimmy's not cooperative or is tearful or combative, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe he didn't sleep because he's been bounced between homes overnight. Or maybe his medication got left in the chaos. And now, although he has ADHD medication, he's not on it. And no one even knew he needed it because the person who's taking care of him only sees him once every 3 years. So those kinds of things are important because then if they reach out to the school and the school reach out to us and says, oh, something's not right, Jimmy's having some trouble today, and I don't know why. I know that this happened, but is there something else going on? Then that's an alert for us to say, hey, let me get Jimmy on the schedule. Let's get him on tomorrow. Who's taking care of him today? Let's figure this out.
I think that the more that people know, if we can build knowledge about what ACEs are and how these traumas, like I said, big T, even little t, start to impact people and the residents of the county, if we build knowledge, then I think with knowledge comes insight. And if we have to see that point where we can build some insights about what's going on and understand it better, now you have people that come up with solutions. And so I think if we start to get that knowledge out there and building those systems amongst more people, then you have a lot more brain power behind finding these solutions so that we can have healthier residents of our county. I think it goes back to just knowledge of that, right? So if I know who I'm hiring and I know that trauma can affect people, then my interaction with them can be different. And if they are calling in or missing, then maybe my first step is not to write them up, but I'm seeing if they need those EAP services, right? So if I'm understanding that, if I start to see that there's a problem with hiring, why is that happening? What are these people going through? And making sure we get them connected to supports or resources. Maybe it's we turn them over to a mentor in the companies earlier so that they have a better connection because we know we can offset stuff with relationships. So I think if they understand that this is here and this is how it impacts their workers, they can start to maybe have some policies that address that a little bit sooner and a little bit more friendly to it is a reality, it's here.